Hey everyone, we really want to see you at Canada's Outdoor Farm Show, which is September 15th to 17th. But most importantly, we want to see you for our complimentary producer luncheon, which is happening on Wednesday, the 16th from 12 to 2. We are going to have a special guest speaker, Marguerite Plante-Dubé, PhD, and her presentation is on pregnancy, toxemia, and prolific sheep. We've got a complimentary lunch for registered attendees. To register for that luncheon, head to ontariosheep.org/events to find the registration link. Now let's get into today's episode.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Flock Talk. I'm Erin Morgan.
And I'm Walker Ball, and we work for the members of the Ontario Sheep Farmers.
Today, we're joined by Julianna Tindall to learn more about how grazing cover crops creates new opportunities for sheep producers. Welcome, Julianna.
Hi, Erin. Hi, Walker. Thanks for having me.
So to start things off, tell us a little bit about your research, what you focused on, and what prompted it. Why did you get started on this project?
Okay, awesome. So to start off, this is my master's project. So I'm a master's student at the University of Guelph under the advisement of Dr. Kim Schneider in the Forage and Service Crops Lab. This project is a Living Labs Ontario project. So one of the projects looking to, create site-specific recommendations for different beneficial management practices in Ontario. Specifically, we're looking at how grazing cover crops with sheep or beef cattle affects soil health and the yield of the following crop, which in this case is corn. To carry out this research, we're working directly with 7 livestock producers across Southern Ontario. So that includes 3 sheep farmers and 4 beef farmers. At each of these farms, kind of just to give you a bit of background of the research setup, we compare a grazed area with a nearby ungrazed area so we can separate the effects of, normal, quote unquote, normal cover cropping versus cover crop grazing. My research gap in my master's project is that we have producers that are increasingly interested in integrating livestock onto annual cropland, but there is limited Ontario-specific research showing what happens to the soil under our climate and growing conditions. So the goal through my work is to generate practical information that reflects real Ontario farms rather than relying on results from other regions. So through this project, we hope to kind of answer those questions, give a little bit of data to the producers to back that practice up.
Fantastic. That's definitely needed.
Right on. So, Julianna, what were some things that you were expecting to find in the research, and what also has actually surprised you?
So when it comes to expecting results in research, it gets a little bit tricky just because you want to stay open to, any of the effects that you might see when you're looking through that data. You want to try to, tease out exactly what's happening and not push it in any one direction. Now, having talked with farmers, my undergrad was also at Guelph. I worked with a lot of farmers, was friends with a lot of them, and talking to them about my master's research, a lot of annual crop farmers were concerned about having livestock on the land just because of compaction, right? That's a big, concern for some of these farmers. So I did expect some short-term compaction, possibly right after the animals left the field. I wasn't sure if it would, become additive. It is just one round of grazing, but we did actually end up finding a small increase in bulk density. So if you don't know what bulk density is, it's a measurement of compaction. The lower values are better. It generally means that there's looser soil, which creates an easier avenue for root growth and water infiltration, but it's heavily influenced by soil texture. So I wasn't really sure what to find with this because we do have a range of soils. We have clay loam to sandy loam. So those heavier soil textures, wasn't sure how compaction was going to measure up, but we did see a small but significant bulk density increase in both of the years that we did this grazing project. So I should mention that we've done this short-term trial twice on the same 7 sites. So we planted and grazed cover crops in 2024, and then we planted and grazed cover crops in a similar area, similar requirements for the area in 2025 as well. Now, just to see if this was, a normal amount of compaction, comparing it to the Omavra topsoil sampling project and their root restricting levels of bulk density, it's not something that farmers would necessarily be concerned about. So it does show. Another surprising thing to me was that even though there may be a significant difference in research, it doesn't necessarily translate into something that a producer would be worried about happening on their farm. But regardless, we went back in the spring before corn was planted and took those compaction measurements again. And the normal freeze-thaw cycles that we see in Ontario did break that compaction up, and there was no significant difference between the grazed and ungrazed afterwards. I was also surprised by how small some of the immediate changes were across all of the soil health indicators that we measured. So along with that bulk density, we did have 19 total soil health indicators that we took. And also that, as I mentioned, we had that 2024 grazing, which was then planted into corn the following year. So we did have 1 year of corn that I harvested last year, which we also didn't see a significant difference between the grazed and ungrazed. So that was a surprise to me, a welcome surprise that we didn't see any negative impacts on the corn yield. So yeah, that was a nice surprise to me. But other than that, yeah, just how long soil health takes to change.
So a couple of follow-up questions. Did you see a difference in compaction between sheep and beef cattle?
No. So actually, this is interesting because I get asked this question quite a bit, right? Yeah, you think, the smaller the animal, possibly there's a lesser risk of compaction. But running the statistical analysis, I did not, there was a equal statistical difference between livestock species when I separated them. And also for a presentation that our farmers gave last year, we calculated animal units on the land. So we collected all of the grazing data, how many days they were on. They're on that, our grazed section is 2 acres. So how long were how many animals, how many pounds, just roughly. And the comparison between sheep and beef was actually pretty similar when it came to the amount of pounds that were on that amount of land. Now, I can't say that that's the reason that we didn't see a difference between, but I think it all comes down to management. And again, we did not see that compaction persist through to the spring before the corn was planted.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then my other question is around sort of the results. So you were thinking maybe there would be like a lower crop yield on the grazed land. Is that because you were thinking there would be less organic matter getting incorporated into the soil, or going into it, what was your sort of hypothesis around the yield?
So when it comes to what we expected with the yield, I think for my purposes, I wanted to have a neutral impact. However, we did see how much cover crop is removed when you graze with those animals. I was curious. I'm like, is that, potential nutrient loss? Is that going to impact the amount available to the corn the next year compared to that ungrazed side? Now, some of the producers were actually saying that they thought that the grazed would be higher because you have that manure application on already. Sometimes the plants can take a little bit to break down, so you don't realize that nutrient, those credits right away. But we are pleased to see that there is a neutral impact, even though it's not, cover crop grazing is going to do X, Y, Z after the first year. It will take a lot longer of a project to be able to see if on the same area if doing this every 3 years in a corn soy wheat rotation would have any additive impact.
Yeah, it's such an interesting project. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. So from a sheep producer's perspective, what are the biggest opportunities you see with this type of system?
So we also took forage quality samples and also biomass. So how much cover crop came off of the land. Our cover crop mix that we used was a 70% oat, 30% pea mixture. This was just because it's a very common cover crop mix that crop farmers have used in Ontario. We did get that tested, for quality, and it has in both years been a very high quality forage, and it also produces quite a bit of biomass. So there's a chance there that it could extend the grazing season for sheep producers and increase the amount of land that could be grazed, which may help their bottom line. It can also reduce reliance on stored feeds so that winter feeding costs could go down. It keeps the manure and nutrients directly on the field, which results in less time and labor cleaning barns or spreading manure. Creating that partnership possibly between crop farmers and sheep farmers is also something that I think is a potential opportunity to still have that benefit of having a cover crop to that cash crop producer, but also having that extension of the grazing season would possibly be a potential opportunity there. So it also, creating that opportunity might allow for a bit more cooperation between the livestock and cash crop sectors in Ontario.
Fantastic. Are there situations where grazing cover crops works really well and then situations where it doesn't?
Yeah. So I really like this question because it goes into, that holistic view of grazing, right? So this is an on-farm project. It's very unique that we're working with these producers. We're kind of integrating into their system more so than them, turning their farm into a research trial farm, right? So a lot of the producers that we work with already are, grazing cover crops for longer than this project has been around. They've had livestock for years, but having those optimal practices for grazing, those responsible grazing practices, not grazing when it's too wet, when that compaction risk is higher, choosing cover crop species that fit their planting window, the livestock they have, the forage needs, when the following cash crop should be planted, and their, equipment, limitations there. And just having that previous knowledge, I think, is when it will work really well, and following all of those guidelines that we already, know and appreciate. Now, for when it might not, last year, this is a very specific example. I think, it all comes down to your farm, your livestock, your needs, very, very tailored. But last year we did have, that really, really dry end of summer and into fall. Some of our farmers weren't able to plant their cover crops, until mid to late August, which would have been okay had we got the rain that we needed in some of the areas, but we didn't see necessarily the biomass production at some of the farms. Now, there was no difference statistically between the years actually of biomass yield. So among all 7 farms, we didn't see a difference there, but specifically, in like the Kawartha Lakes region, we did see some lower production there, which translates, into less grazing days. We saw that on another project that we had at the Elora Beef Research Station too. So that's just a little bit of when it might not. However, it's more so you might just not get the extension of the grazing season that you could in other years.
Yeah. Okay. Good point.
Wow. So if producers wanted to explore this with neighboring cash crop farmers, what would be some of your suggestions on strategies to convince the crop farm of the benefits of grazing cover crops? Although I know you've said quite a bit, but if you have any more, I'm convinced.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Honestly, I would treat it just as, a conversation to be had. I would start by, going over both of your goals, treat it as a very casual conversation, a working relationship, if you will. You want to hear those concerns, you want to hear those goals, you want to see how you guys can work together, talk about, what fields might be of interest, where they are, if it makes sense to you, if you have the temporary fencing, the mobile water, do you have the facilities to, make this work? And also, very exciting, hopefully out of this project we'll also get a fact sheet, maybe by the end of this year, hopefully by the end of next, which will also have, that data that we've collected in a very easily digestible format that, you could go, hey, this is what they've done. These are the soil textures that they've done it on. These were the conditions, this is what they have seen in the short term. And just having that conversation about cover crops, why they're using them in the first place, and just having that data to back up that, you still will get the coverage of your soil that you want, and whatever their goals are, just having that conversation and their concerns surrounding livestock and stuff like that, and building that relationship.
Nice. Plus, we love a fact sheet.
Yeah. We do love a fact sheet. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I'm excited to make it.
That's going to be actually really helpful for our producers who are trying to tell the story but don't have the data to back it up. So that's going to be fantastic. So what have you learned from working directly with producers during this project?
I will say I've learned a lot. It has been my favorite part of this project. Is actually the main reason why I chose to do this project, because having that, I'd call it social science component, is something that I feel like a lot of researchers don't get the privilege of experiencing, right? Is being able to work directly with the people that will benefit from the work that you're doing. Specifics of what I've learned, there's no single grazing system that fits every farm. So even within the 2-acre parcel, we do ask that, they just graze that with their animals, but some of them, rotationally graze. So they'll do 1 acre then the other and keep it, consistent with how long the animals are on each. Some, one of my farmers had 1,500 sheep on the 2 acres for 8 hours last fall. And that was, that was how his system was set up to graze. They have very valuable knowledge about, their animals, their fields, their equipment, and the local conditions that, like, us as researchers consider. And we take that into creating our SOPs and, having our talks with fellow researchers. It's like, it's basically like having an expert on where you're doing your trial. And I feel like I've learned a lot about, the general soil health, where they've been, where they're going, what their goals are. It's all very, very beneficial. And also working directly with those farmers has helped ensure that our research questions and recommendations remain grounded in real farm conditions. Sometimes research can get a little specific or a little, answering one question, but kind of forgetting about the others. So having this holistic approach and working directly with the producers has been really nice to get a, big picture answer.
Excellent.
Cool. Can I hear the passion in your voice? That's great. No, it's fantastic.
Awesome.
Is there anything in the project that's challenged your any assumptions you had going into it?
I think just as a researcher going into my master's, there was kind of an expectation to have, all of these big results as you come out of it. However, being able to say, hey, this doesn't impact it is just as valuable as coming out and saying, this is going to change your life. Everyone should be doing this. It's having that data to back up something that people are already doing, and in the age of regenerative agriculture becoming a forefront of a lot of talks, it's like one of the principles of regenerative agriculture is to integrate livestock onto annual cropland, and go back to some of those old school practices that we've kind of strayed away from. Just having that, and also knowing that a statistically detectable short-term change doesn't necessarily mean that soil has experienced long-term damage is something that challenged my assumption. So just kind of bridging that, the thought of a researcher who wants results, but also this is still really good information to share with farmers.
Absolutely. Yeah. So this is, we're still in the middle of this project because you don't have the corn harvest data from your second grazing year. And there's some economic analysis that's going on as well. So what do you hope to have in the next few years as the research project concludes?
So actually, there's a new student taking over for me, so maybe you guys can get him on here in a year or two. But I'm hoping that we're going to have a complete data set that shows, two side-by-side stories on the same farm. We're not able to go in the exact same area, obviously, because of the crop rotation. But two side-by-side, we saw this in 2024 and 2025. We saw this in 2025 and 2026. This is kind of the starting point, right? So hopefully we'll inspire other researchers to continue this work going, or continue working with these VMPs, working with these farmers. When it comes to what we expect to come out of this, just that last year of corn yield, in general, just the questions that I hope the next few years of research will answer is that that cash cropper concern of, will livestock coming back onto my land damage my subsequent crop yields, and also with that Ontario livestock producer who may not be able to expand because of the cost of land, or the rising input costs or anything like that. I'm hoping that will answer enough that we're able to form that connection and potentially extend that grazing season, allow for a little bit more growth, and expand the beef and sheep production. And
so there is an economic component too, right? Like some of the farmers are getting some economic analysis of the work.
Yeah, so that's done by another faculty on campus. Now that is still in the preliminary stages. They did get a draft report at our Living Labs co-development meeting back in February, and there were some promising results. I can't give you exact numbers, right, but they're, having that extension of the grazing season did save them some money. I do hope that will be available to farmers as well.
Yeah, that one looked really interesting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So if sheep producers could take away one message from your research today, Julianna, what would you hope it is?
I think my main message would be that grazing cover crops can be a valuable opportunity for Ontario sheep producers, but that successful integration with those cash crop farmers planting cover crops, and with their own limitations, it depends on thoughtful site-specific management, and hopefully this data will provide some of that.
Yeah. Right on.
That's amazing. Well, thanks so much for all the work that you did on your research. It sounds like you're getting near the end of your master's, so congratulations. And we hope you'll stick around in the industry for a long time.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
And thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode of Flock Talk, please subscribe to your podcast app to receive alerts to our future episodes. And please share our podcast with your friends.
And for more Ontario Sheep Farmers content, follow us on social media under the handle @Ontario Sheep Farmers and visit our website, ontariosheep.org, for more resources. Thanks for listening.